So we're wrapping up our series today on the Our Values, and I'm delighted and honored to introduce to you who will be sharing in this environment for the first time, our student ministry director, Pastor Ben Canan. So Ben has been a part of our church for 10 or 11 years, something like that. He came while he was in college at OSU, and he's a value-added benefit to our staff. But what I really want is for you to hear his heart on the next generation. Ben was a middle school boys small group leader for 9 years. Our family benefited from that. Nathan was in his small group. Others that are still here are benefits of that are now adults. Ben has a longevity of connection not only to our church but to Jesus and the heart of why he does what he does, and he's going to share that with you this morning. Would you guys make him welcome this morning?
Well, good morning. I'm glad to be here. As Brad said, we're finishing up this Our Values series. And what I want you to think about when it comes to an R value, it describes insulation. So a higher R value rating means it insulates better. And so the insulation in your walls of your home or in the roof, that insulation serves to create a favorable environment inside your house. So when we think about the values of the Refinery Church, it's helpful to think of it that way, I think. So we've talked about our values here at the church. We've talked about the value of God and others, the value of grace over guilt, of truth with kindness, of serving sacrificially, the value of biblical teaching, of intentional relationships, and today I get to share with you the value of the next generation. So who am I to talk to you all about the next generation? Because I wasn't trained in it. In fact, I have degrees in biology and public health from Ohio State, and I worked for 10 years in medical research. Most of that time was spent managing a cardiac research lab where we got to do things like take tissue from those who were getting a new heart. In the process of getting a heart transplant, we'd take their old heart back to our lab and do all kinds of informative, insightful experiments. So I did that for a long time, and during that time, I was also volunteering here, spending my time here, as Brad said, with some young men, 7th and 8th graders, in small groups. And some of those guys are now in their 20s and have kids of their own. So that has been just an amazing perspective. And you know, my time in the lab, I was working with undergraduate students, with graduate students, with recent college grads, in an environment that seems to pit science and religion against each other. But what I see in science is how it reveals God's wonder. So a few years ago, God did something crazy in my life. He showed up big, and he called me away from my time in the lab, called me away from a job that I was pretty good at, and that had good benefits and good pay, and he called me to invest my life in the next generation, in student ministry. So I tell you my background to say that I'm really not an expert in this. I'm not. But I am committed to helping young people encounter and follow Jesus. So for the last year and a half or so, I've been full-time here as the director of student ministries. And it's been amazing. I've got a picture of my family I want you to see here. My wife there, Cynthia, she'll tell you it's not always been easy. But there's my two boys, Miles and JJ. I'll tell you, I am optimistic about the next generation. I'm not naive about the challenges the young people face today. But really, every challenge is an opportunity, isn't it? So I'm confident about the transforming power of God in our lives. So I could tell you and give you a bunch of stats, and Brad has done that in the past, about how the church is declining in America, and about how young people don't stay connected to a local church. But I bet you already know that. Just think about the young people in your life. Maybe they're your kids, maybe they're their friends, or your nieces and nephews, or your grandchildren, the young people here, or the young people in this community. What do you see? Do you see a culture pursuing Jesus, or do you see confusion? To tell you the truth, I see both. I see some young men and women who are passionate, but I see a lot of confusion too. And I think we like to blame somebody for that, right, or something for that, and there's lots of things we could look to for blame. Maybe their kids are distracted, right? Too many things they're distracted by. Too much screen time, social media and that presence, the public school's fault. And maybe all those things play some role in it. But let me ask you this. How do older generations describe young people today? From my time with teenagers, and hearing from others like Brad, who's in youth ministry for a long time and who still has opportunity to lead seminars of young men and women and teach, like at Mount Vernon, here's what young people hear: that they're lazy, they're glued to their phones, and that they're distracted. And they own those to some degree, right? Like, you guys wouldn't say it's completely untrue. But why is it that that's how young people are defined? Honestly, some kids are lazy, right? Some are distracted. Some are glued to their phones. But could it be that we didn't provide opportunities where they really could have succeeded? So I've been a part of going on trips with students for a long time, and so I've seen some things over the years when it comes to opportunities that kids get a chance to be a part of. So we're always trying to put kids in places where they can grow a little bit. And so we've got on our trips, we've got teams where kids will be making meals, or kids will be doing some light construction. And so I've seen in one instance a young lady who she was on the kitchen team, and I'm like, all right, you're going to be making some juice. We're mixing up some juice. And you know how it works. Like, how many of you had Country Time lemonade before, right? Just that powder. You got that canister. You pour the powder into the cover, into the lid, and dump it into the pitcher, mix up the water. But this poor lady, this poor young girl, I think she'd never done it before. And so I'm sitting back watching, wanting to laugh, right? Because it was just funny seeing her try to do it, not having had that experience before. Seeing her try to find out, man, how am I going to mix this sugar up in the water? What am I going to do with the spoon? Like, what do I touch before and after I touch the spoon? And I'm like, oh, I'm not going to drink. And when she's done, I'm like, I'm not drinking that, right? we're not going to have juice today. Sorry. And there have been other experiences I've had where I've seen, or we're assigned, a couple guys to wash dishes. And I see him struggle to get the soap off the dishes after they've dunked him in the water, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness. You just rinse it in the water, right? And put it on the rack. Like, why is it so hard to rinse soap off dishes? Or to take out the trash, right? Something simple like that. Take out the trash. Hey guys, I'm gonna take out the trash. And we've got those, giant trash cans often where we show up, wheels on the bottom, and so it's our job to get them out of the kitchen, roll them outside, get them to the dumpster. And I remember one time watching a couple people trying to get this bag of trash, this giant bag of trash, because we put way too much in it, trying to get it up into the dumpster. And so you can imagine what happened, I think. There's garbage everywhere. The bag rips down the side, right? Garbage on the street or the parking lot, garbage on themselves, and some garbage in the dumpster. They got some in there. And I tell you about those things not to embarrass people or to poke fun at what I've observed, but really just as an example where I saw some kids who maybe didn't have opportunities in the past. Like I think maybe before that trip, some of these people hadn't gotten an opportunity to wash dishes or to take out trash or to mix up country time lemonade. And as parents, and as a generation that wants to provide a better life for our kids, a better life for the next generation, I think sometimes we deprive them of opportunities. And I don't think it's because we don't love our kids. I think it's because we do love our kids. We want them to succeed, don't we? But is it really the best expression of that love when we shield kids from every pain or discomfort or disappointment? Because it would have been so much easier for me to just make the juice. I could have done it. I could have taken out the trash and washed the dishes. But who here, and raise your hand if this is true, who here has learned more from failure than from success? Me too, for sure. And there's real value in failure. I think we learn humility, and we gain perspective on our own God-given abilities. I've got a verse in Romans I want to share with you. It'll be up here on the slide. And Paul writes this in chapter 12. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith that God has distributed to each of you. In bold there, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought. I believe kids are at a disadvantage when they believe they're perfect. I think they need some opportunities to fail, to see how God has uniquely gifted them, or maybe not uniquely gifted them. The next generation needs a clear understanding of how God works in our lives. In Psalm 145, I want to share this with you as well. Psalm 145, verse 4 says this: one generation commends your works to another. They tell of your mighty acts. In other translations, the words that are used there that describe one generation telling the next generation are declare and proclaim and praise. What do those words do for you? Did they describe how you talk about Jesus in your life? Do they describe how I talk about Jesus in my life? Because it's more than just stating information. The next generation needs our healthy engagement. The next generation deserves our healthy engagement. It's out there on the wall outside the middle school, and I believe that. I want to share a passage in Deuteronomy also. So this is Moses, who had led his people, getting ready to pass on leadership to the next generation of leader. And here's what he said. He'd spent a bunch of time going over the law and the warnings for his people. And here's what he says: take to heart all the words of warning I have given you today. Pass them on as a command to your children, so that they will obey every word of these instructions. These instructions are not empty words. They are your life. I realized in my life as a parent that I'd missed it here in this. So in my house, we read the Jesus Storybook Bible. I don't know if you know it or not. It's like a kid's version of the Bible. So maybe you're familiar with it if you have young kids. If you're not, I think it's even useful for adults. I love it as a way to see Jesus through the entire story of the Bible. But we read that. Miles, my older son, loves it. But we also read, other books that 4-year-old boys love, like Star Wars and Superman and Batman. And one night, as we're reading from the Jesus Storybook Bible, he asked me, "Are these stories real?" and I was crushed. Right? It hurt me. Because I think we'd treated it like any other story for Miles. We hadn't lived these words like they were our life. So what's the goal of the next generation? What's the end goal? What's our responsibility in training up children? As Proverbs 22 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. So what's the goal of the next generation? What are we training up children to be? To be comfortable? To be happy? To be safe? I believe that the goal is committed, risk-taking, thoughtful, loving disciples of Jesus. And I know that I cannot do that if the Word of God is not on display in my life. So when it comes to influence, you've all got it. You've all got influence in your lives. Whether you're a parent or not, you've got influence. Whether you're in middle school or high school or elementary school, you've got influence. So do you want to be the kind of parent or influencer that your parents were for you? Maybe. If yes, are you doing it? And how are you doing it? If you'd say, no, I don't want to be that kind of influencer, what can you do to be able to commend and declare and proclaim God's faithfulness? So in my life, there's areas I need to work on to live out the Word of God. And parenting is one of those. I struggle with anger in my parenting. I do not think that I'm not saying it's true for everybody, but I do not think that I can show God's love by allowing frustration to build to the point of yelling at my kids. And I'll tell you that my dad did not have it easy in parenthood. My mom and dad had 4 kids. My older brother's right over there. So 4 kids. And I was 5 years old when my mom died. So here he was in his 30s. Here he was my age, with 4 kids under 8 years old. And you know what? I can barely handle the 2 I have with Cynthia, who does most of the work. So my dad is a terrific man. He is. He's a great grandfather to my boys. He's a great example of God's love in my life. But I know that he dealt with anger too. So whether or not I learned or inherited that anger in parenting, or if it's just something that all parents deal with, I know it's there for me. And I know that that will prevent me from commending and declaring and proclaiming and praising God's awesome work in my life that's on display for the next generation. So I wonder what it is for you. What emotions or behaviors prevent you from praising God with your life? And what effect does that have on the next generation? I believe in a culture of entertainment, and that's what we're in, right? I believe in a culture of entertainment that student ministry is a culture of transformation. And at this church, we value the next generation. Our student mission statement is helping teenagers encounter and follow Jesus. And our church mission is to help people love and follow Jesus for life. So we want to come beside you in your ministry of parenting and in your influence of the next generation. That's why we provide safe environments where kids can be challenged. Safe environments, I don't mean by that an environment where your kid's not ever going to sprain their ankle or be exposed to the grit, that's in this world, because they will, as part of what we do. But I mean safe in that they'll be surrounded by men and women, by ministry partners here who seek to build trust with kids and partner with families. That's why we go to camp. That's why we have overnighters like the one they just did Friday night with boys and their dads here. And that's why we'll take middle schoolers and high schoolers to Atlanta this summer and have fun together and work hard in the sweltering heat and humidity down south. And you know what? We'll make some juice, and we'll wash dishes, and we'll take out trash. And there's information about this particular experience outside for you to grab today. So if you're in middle school or high school, I want you to grab that. That's right over there next to the connection card. We want to help you, church, with environments that can spur you and the next generation on. So please, don't be so busy that your kids and the next generation don't have time for God and for Jesus and for the church. Because I believe the best thing we can do is live a life on fire for Jesus, so that the next generation can be transformed and equipped, so that we don't graduate from Jesus when we graduate from high school, so that the Holy Spirit has opportunity to grow in hearts. So what can we do? It can be as simple as giving a kid a high five in the church, making them feel known. Stop to listen to what they have to say. Live out the power that Jesus has in your life on display for them, because they need to hear it and they need to see it. So we've got these cards for you on the way out. You'll get one of these. It says this: I want the next generation to witness Jesus at work in my life through blank, blank, blank. You get to fill it out. I want the next generation to witness Jesus at work in my life through what? I tell you, for myself, here's what I put. Through my words, through how I talk about him, and through the priority of my marriage. That's how I'm going to do it. But I want to know what you're going to do, what challenge you feel there. So I invite you to do that. I invite you to grab one of these cards and spend some time thinking about it. Declare how Jesus will be on display in your life. And then take it, hang it on the fridge, or put it on the dashboard in your car, your desk at work, somewhere where you will see it. And maybe even